Hi everyone, this is the Raven's Librarian, and I will be rambling discussing about episode 8, the final episode of the One Piece live action adaptation. Mostly just comparing it to the anime and the manga, trying to keep spoilers from the rest of the series out of the conversation, but I will be making comparisons back and forth. So if that's something you're interested, welcome. If not, peace be with you. So this episode had two main points: the showdown with Arlong, and then the wrap-up for the whole series. The fight with Arlong was, for me, a mixed bag. It had really good stuff, but it also had kind of meh stuff. I'd say I get the really back and forth. The really good thing was the Zoro and Sanji dynamic was on point for me. The fact that they don't get along is a little weird in this version, if only because there's not necessarily as much setup for why they don't like each other, but again, that's overall just a matter of the pacing. I still think they actually nail how they don't get along really well, and in this version they're not, as of yet, they're not constantly yelling at each other. That might come off later, but they are doing the whole back and forth, ripping each other kind of at the same time. You can tell that they are not just like throwing insults for the sake of it. It's more just two tough guys, riffing each other back and forth. There is that part where Zoro is clearly still recovering from his fight with Mihawk, and even though Sanji says it in a very mildly condescending way, like, hey, you think you might be getting a bit tired, the way he expresses it on his face, you kind of get the vibe that he's coming off like a jerk, but basically saying, hey, if you're tired, take a break, I got this. But obviously, he's not gonna say that in a nice way. He's gonna say it like they got something to prove. That's the whole point of their dynamic. They're not enemies, but they're not gonna be friendly. Anyway, that's not on its own. That's not the only good part. I like the choreography of the two of them just absolutely destroying the fishmen, jumping across the battlefield. Like, there's a cool scene where at first when Luffy and Nami are running towards the tower where Arlong is gonna be, and so one of the fishmen tries to block the path, and then Zoro just walks through the rock formation and just chops him on his legs to clear a path. It's unspoken, just the fact that he's making sure that his captain isn't being, messed with. There's the same thing where there's two good lines. One where right after, when they're already taking a beating from, I forget his name, but he's the fishman that kind of uses a martial arts style. He's the last one that's actually left standing, kind of giving both Zoro and Sanji a hard time. It's the part where after he, makes technically it's meant to be an insult towards them, but it's directed at Nami, where he says, Nami made a mistake trusting, putting her trust in weaklings like you. And obviously Sanji zeroes in on the insulting Nami part. And even Zoro already knows. It's like, oh, you messed up there. And then Sanji proceeds to unleash his choreographed, barrage of named attacks. And Zoro tries to mock him for it, only for Sanji to unknowingly make the call back to Luffy in the beginning of the story and go, all badass people name drop their attacks. And Zoro just deadpan, just stares and goes, yeah, you're gonna fit right in. There's the included part. They included the Usopp fight with the fishman, which is a cool way of having him incorporate his creative fighting style, without forcing him to get stuck in the melee and in the crowd. I would say it doesn't match the same level of cool factor of the other version, only because it doesn't have the inner monologue / struggle of where Usopp is basically considering, okay, I could just pretend to lose this fight now and just act dead and let the fisherman just walk off and not worry about it. But then he's obviously driven to finish the fight, not because, well, out of pride, but more so out of a sense of not wanting to let his friends down. And there is the implication of that, but it's not to the same extent. But at the same time, Usopp in this version isn't anywhere near the level of scaredy cat that he comes off as in the other versions. So you can argue that it's toning it down on both extremes. So he doesn't have to prove himself as hard, so he doesn't need the self-encouragement as much. But anyway, then the last part is the fight with Luffy and Arlong. Here's the where most of the mixed bag stuff that comes in. Because on the one hand, the fight is mostly so-so. It's a whole problem with the limitation of the special effects. They can't do much. And so it's just a straight fight inside of this wide space so that they can do a lot of cool attacks. But I do still appreciate the fight because they stuck to what really mattered in the original, which was what this fight meant for Nami, not what this fight was for Luffy, the main character. Because in these early fights, like, Luffy doesn't have this big dramatic thing going on with the villains. They managed to get a little bit of it with Arlong only by having him fight Arlong first in Baratie, so it sets up the idea that they have, you know, a rematch so Luffy can prove himself. But the actual animosity, quote, rivalry comes with Garp at the end, so that pays off. Instead, here it's Luffy figured out, okay, I need to find a way to beat this guy. So they combine what happens in the other versions, where he decides, okay, I'm going to destroy the room where all of Nami's maps are because this place is like a prison to her, so I'm going to set her free. Here they combine that with his need to find a practical way of taking out Arlong because of the gap in physicality. So he decides, you know, the two bird one stone thing. It's like, alright, I'm gonna tear this whole building apart. They even match the thing where, you know, Arlong is trying to stop him from destroying the building, but he also winds up throwing his hands and breaking bricks too, which goes along with what happened in the other version too, where he's trying to stop Luffy from destroying the maps, he swings his giant blade across a bunch of them, tearing them to pieces, you know, doing more damage arguably himself. So that's actually a nice touch of consistency between the characters. Like I said, Arlong comes off a bit out of character only because he monologues way more about the unfairness of the conflict between the species. But he still sticks to always like insulting Nami, always belittling her and making it about, you know, how he's going to use her to conquer everything else, and that brings in the iconic line to make sure that Luffy can. And once again, in this version of Luffy verbalizes his thought process more than the other version, still sticking close to his main mindset, but adding more directness to it by actually like saying the parts that why it pisses him off and why he takes umbrage at it. That'll pay off also when he fights his old man. The added touch of when he manages to bring down the whole building, keeping the same thing. Here it's just an after effect of the fight. The other way around. In the original version, him tearing down the building was a result of him just going, you know, all out on it. Here, as he's trying to do that, he decides, okay, I'm going to bring the whole building down. Without realizing it, he ends up landing the hit right on Arlong. you don't get the impression that he like timed it. It's just like in the other version, it's just a matter of, no, I'm just bringing all my weight down on the building. Arlong doesn't time it fast enough, gets right in front of the hit, takes the whole blast on his back, and presumably dies. But now he's probably alive and probably going to jail. I wonder if that part is gonna stay consistent in this version. Like, are they gonna actually? Because I imagine Don Krieg's not alive, but outside of him, it's possible all the other villains are still alive too. We know the first two are, because we see them at the end. Anyway, we wrap up the Fishman arc a lot faster than I thought it would. At first I was like, wait, that's it? But then with the Marine stuff, that's when I realized, oh, this is the final fight. And I called the fact that I thought the last thing was gonna be, that in the previous episode, I thought it was gonna be possibly either the Marines show up to help in the fight, or the Marines show up right after the fight. And I thought it was gonna be they show up and the Straw Hats run away. I should have, but I genuinely didn't think of the possibility of, oh no, this is where Garp just gets here and just confronts Luffy. Because I honestly kept thinking of it like it was gonna always be they confront each other as Luffy is trying to run away. Thinking of it too much on how to quote-unquote keep it the same. But instead, it's like, no, we've been building up to it. It's the one thing that we've been building up the most in the live action. So no, we're gonna have Luffy facing off against his old man. And it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's like an absolute one-sided affair. It's not Luffy actually beating his old man. It's Luffy proving himself to his old man. Carrying on the fact that the Vice Admiral Garp isn't actually trying to capture or kill him. He's just trying to test him. Like, part of him maybe thinks he can like just tie Luffy up and toss him back on the island where he was born and just try to like get him to like knock it off, stop trying to be a pirate. But at the end, you could tell that like the conversations with the other characters, Mihawk, Seth, Kobe, like they were, if not getting to him necessarily, like the assumption is that either Garp was thinking of stopping Luffy, or as he himself admits at the end, is I always knew I wasn't gonna talk you out of this. And I think I can, he's being honest about that this was about, in his own way, his own stubborn old man way, it was him forcing one final test out of this fiasco. So there's the added part of him fighting him. Unlike in the other versions, they don't really pay any emphasis on how he's able to do this. Minor grip about the other version that may or may not be a choice, a deliberate choice from the creators to like downplay how the rubber fruit works. As with everything, like maybe they don't want to focus too much on, okay, that's gonna be a thing, on how to emphasize that in the other versions, him actually getting hit and having it hurt was made a much bigger deal. Here it's like, nah, it hurt, like what's the point? But it has been consistent because okay, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe the distance rate. So he fights Garp. There's a thing with Kobe carrying on his characterization. They ended with the idea that this is now gonna lead into him, and I think he's called Helmeppo in this version. They might have changed his name for shorten it, but that these two are going to stick around and actually are now going to train with Garp and get stronger. So obviously setting up that they will be, possibly they might be a more consistent role in this version. It might also be a way to like solidify, actually confirm where they're gonna be, even if we don't see them for a while. And then the final part, which, as with everything, it's maybe more for the fan in me of the anime and manga, but you know, it's one of my favorite moments is when they do the wanted poster and then they do the showing of everyone around the world that has met him, all the different groups and characters reacting to the wanted poster. So like his hometown, the bartender, seeing him probably like being partially relieved that he's still around, that he's okay, that he's still alive, but at the same time kind of like, well, I guess he's a criminal now. There's the same thing, the joke sequence, like Usopp, I forgot, Usopp was like, as with the original, bragging that he's technically in the wanted poster, and then when his friend from the village, Zero Village, sees the wanted poster, the part she focuses on is on the back of his head. That was a nice touch. The Seth puts the wanted poster right on the side of the restaurant, like somewhere in the chef's kitchen area, sort of like just for a friendly self-reminder whenever he's working. Oh, and when, actually, this is purely for a reference, I'm not going to get into the reasons because spoilers, but the nice reference when the girl from Zero Village opens the newspaper and one side is Luffy's wanted poster, but on the other side there's a the semi-tiny but emphasized, like you can see the logo, it's like village terrorized by, that was a nice touch. For you who know the reference, like you get it. Hopefully it's not going to be too big a deal for anyone else. The final member of when, no, was there someone else? No, the next one was when these Buggy the Clown, who managed to get away somehow. They don't even explain, like, did he get a ship or something? But like when he sees the wanted poster and he's like, I'm gonna kill that little shit. And then it shows Alvida right next to him, like, confirming, yep, she's still alive. She's in this version still too. Based on her appearance, I imagine she doesn't have her devil fruit. I could be wrong. They may have decided to keep the devil fruit, but let her keep the actress, not do any weird CGI with that. Because really, as long as she has the ability, it doesn't really matter what she looks like. Not really. So, that could just be a decision to like, we're just gonna stick to the actress. And then the final bit, which is the inclusion of the part with all of them putting their legs on the barrel and doing the camaraderie shared promise thing after showing the boat and showing the flag for the first time in full size for the whole ship. Also, in having seen it already a few times, I can definitely say that the going merry thing about it being kind of creepy in live action really just boils down to lighting and seeing it like from bottom up. When you just look at it from like as it's sailing on the ship, it looks cute. And maybe that was just me, but that was like when I saw it the first time from the angle that I posted on, it's like, it could be a little intimidating, but then when I see it just sailing by, and especially when Luffy's like sitting right on it, it's like, oh, that's adorable. Oh, anyway, the last touch was the reference to if they go there, if they do another season, the reverse mountain, where they're like, wait, this can't be right. Well, according to this, the Grand Line entrance is that way, but it's the elevation's like a mountain. That's obviously there just for like, that must be a mistake. But then, if you know, you know. And similarly, the added dun 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 2 parts. First is the Mihawk Shanks moment, so that sets up a camaraderie straight from the original. And are you still gonna be? Oh, now you are. And the added part of the last bit with the character that's smoking a cigarette, looks at the wanted poster, and then lights it up with his cigarette. No context, it's obviously setting up a new antagonist or a new character for the next season. if you know, you know. It's an interesting choice of how they... Because, again, without getting too much into it, based on how they ended the season, I was thinking for a moment that, like, oh, maybe they're not gonna use that character, and they're not gonna use that part of the story. They decided to skip it for whatever reason. They might still, but at the very least, if they're skipping the part, they're not skipping the character. So, you know, it'll be really interesting to see how they plan to do that character, if that was actually ever gonna be a thing. I'm speaking a lot in hypothetical and stuff because like, I have no clue where this is all gonna go. Like, I know based on, I haven't seen a lot of reviews, but based on like clips and algorithm stuff, like the adaptation seems to be doing okay from reactions and reviewers. So it doesn't seem to have like the death nail stigma of an adaptation, but that doesn't really mean anything unless a lot of people end up watching it. And even then, I don't know where the line is for Netflix, Oda, whoever gets the green light on this. It's like, oh, if these many people watch it, we're definitely doing another season, or that was never gonna be in the cards. I'd assume it's in the cards, cause money, but I don't know who the hell makes these decisions, and I sure as hell don't have their numbers. So it's purely on they're hinting at something, so clearly it's not out of the realm of possibility. Whether it's gonna happen is a whole other $20. But in regards to me, I'm done with the whole comparison part. In wrap up, I actually do if that actually is the general consensus, regardless, I have it. I personally do believe that this is a good adaptation. It's not perfect. No. Hopefully I've not come off as just one note in the way I've described it. I know I'm just mostly rambling, but like I've already mentioned, like the fight scenes are okay. The dialogue either goes from sticking directly to the original or just kind of standard group banter, you know, nothing really memorable or quotable. Again, when it's not just directly taken from the other version. But there are like standout stuff, like and special effects are kind of hit or miss. But the sets are freaking amazing. The actors, for the most part, like I genuinely think there's a bad actor in the main cast. Any issue generally hinges on what they're being told to say, not who's saying it. And the actual changes that they made go through the gambit. Go from changes I completely agree with to changes that I'm, neutral to, and they add. Sorry, but that was weird. Seeing you from the inside is weird. Changes that match with the story work for this version of the story. Make it stand out in a way that just adapting everything verbatim would have done no favors to this version of the story. And yeah, again, there are changes that kind of make me scratch my head and raise an eyebrow, but for the most part, those are actually in the minority. Most of the changes are good to that's okay. Like it's memorable. It stands out. It makes me think about stuff. And again, it's a lot of, especially this all hinges on all of this being like right out of my brain territory. Obviously, I haven't given the series time to like process. I haven't gone back and forth, watched other things to like analyze what I actually saw. And I'm not an expert on all the things that go into making a show. So this is all from just one generic fan's point of view. But if they announced another season of the show, I would not be, oh god, why? No, I would actually be like, oh, I'm actually, I'm definitely down to watch that. As opposed to like, again, cliche, arbitrary fanboy comment. Like, if it'd be the difference if you told me, oh, hey, do you know they're making another live action Avatar: The Last Airbender show is be like an actual live action show, I'd be like, oh god, or a movie. Like, no, please no. But that's final note. Coffin. I would, if anyone cares, I would recommend this series from a fan's perspective. You'd have to get from someone else whether or not this show genuinely works as a standalone. My head's too stuck in the comparison territory, so it's up to other people to be like, oh yeah, this actually is a good way to, you can watch this on its own and it works really well. I'd say the things that it does differently genuinely are impressive, so it's not a diminishing returns situation. But enough of the rambling. Hope you enjoyed these videos. Hope anyone saw them, was interested in what I had to say. And if you're still here, if anybody's interested in my rambling thoughts on other things One Piece related, be it, the anime, the manga, the other things that Netflix is now dropping to feed off of the algorithm with people watching the live action, please, if at all interested, leave a comment down below. And regardless of that, thank you to anyone who has seen this series, and I hope to see you in future videos I make. This has been the Raven's Librarian, and please take care out there.